At the time that I was building that recruitment company with Paul, I was living with one of my best friends who was forging a career as a rapper. And he was actually signed to a US record label. So I was quasi managing him, helping him with, the commercial aspects of his business early on in his career. And we would travel to the US quite a lot because he was signed to a US label, spending time there. And I was the guy, who had 100 notes in his iPhone of companies and ideas that he wanted to build. And there was one summer, and it was in 2014, that, the record label had kind of flown us out to LA. And I met, it was the night that for the first time, I met my co-founder, Josh. And he's now my co-founder for the second time in Pipe, but originally in Skirt. I met him because he had just graduated and was building his company. It was a YC-backed company, Y Combinator, which, for UK listeners, it's a lot like Entrepreneur First, very similar to what Matt's building in the UK, which is an incredible program, by the way. And Y Combinator is kind of like the pinnacle program in the US for startups to go through, accelerators. And Josh had just been through that. He was actually at the time the youngest person to ever go through, just an incredibly talented guy. And he had tracked down my friend who was a rapper at the earliest stage in his career, because it was the company that Josh was building was a big data music analytics company. So he was in Atlanta at the time. He'd flown to LA to meet with a bunch of artists that they discovered. And, I always remember my friend, I remember it so vividly. He said to me, because I have a computer science background, he said to me, "Harry, there's a bunch of computer geeks that are coming to the studio tonight. They want to talk to me about some business. I need you to come because I have no idea what they want." And I said, "Sure, sounds interesting. I'd love to meet some people in tech." And lo and behold, fast forward 12 hours of conversation at this studio. It was Atlantic Studios on Cahuenga in LA. I had pitched Josh probably 50 out of the 100 ideas that I had in my notes. And I just felt this instant connection where we were kind of like riffing, and it was finally someone who didn't think I was too crazy to be pulling off these ideas. And I didn't know at the time, but Josh was actually going through an acquisition process for his big data music analytics company. And in the back of his mind, he was thinking about, what do I want to do next? So the timing was all just very serendipitous. And one of those ideas that I pitched him was what became Skirt. And what Skirt was at the time, there was an app called Hotel Tonight. I don't know if you remember that app. And it was a sort of three-sided marketplace where you had Hotel Tonight in the middle, and you had hotels with underutilized inventory and primarily business travelers that wanted to get a last-minute deal on that underutilized inventory contained within one application. I was a user. I loved it. It's now been acquired by Airbnb. It became a really good company.
Yeah, it was awesome.
Yeah, and back in 2014, they were just getting started out. And I was thinking to myself, what other vertical could this be applied to? And I felt, much like you, car rental was fundamentally broken. And I also felt like the future of ownership wasn't full time. Car ownership wasn't, everyone was talking about autonomous cars, etc., but there was going to be a long period of time before we got to full autonomy. I felt like there was a better way. And the idea that I pitched was effectively Hotel Tonight for car rentals, wherein you'd have this beautiful, seamless booking experience within the app. 2 taps, your credit card was saved in the app. And by the way, this all seems very obvious today, sort of 6-7 years later, but there was nothing like it in 2014. And the car would just turn up to your door. It would come to you instead of having to wait in line and go through this horrible rental process that we've all been through. And that grew, into a pretty large operation. We grew it to 120 full-time employees, almost 4,000 part-time employees that were actually delivering the vehicles. We launched in about 5 major cities. We raised venture funding from this a small VC firm out of LA called Upfront Ventures. And we were kind of off to the races, and we were doing everything sort of by the Silicon Valley playbook. And from sort of conception, when I pitched Josh, to when we actually moved into a 1-bedroom apartment and started sort of pitching to raise money and starting the business, it was only 4 months. I'd gone back to London. I dropped everything, moved out to the US, and just sort of plonked myself in a 1-bedroom apartment. And that grew to a 2-bedroom apartment, 3-bedroom, 4-bedroom, sort of scaled with the employee headcount until we finally, got quite a large office. So yeah, that was the formation of Skirt, and also my first entrance into the US. That's what allowed me and afforded me the opportunity to move to the US and, legally be able to work here and get a visa and get sponsored by a company that I created.